The Memphis Grizzlies had a 15-point lead against the Dallas Mavericks on Tuesday. On the road in Dallas, 15-point lead. And then everything went wrong. Or to most people, it was just one thing. Dallas shot 26 fourth quarter free throws. That was a huge part of the result in this game. But guess what? Many other things went wrong. I'm not just blaming this game on the free throw discrepancy. We're going to talk about that here next on Locked On Grizzlies.
You are Locked On Grizzlies, your daily Memphis Grizzlies podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, everyone, and welcome back to Locked On Grizzlies. I am Damichael Cole, beat writer for the Commercial Appeal right here in Memphis, Tennessee. Thank you guys for tuning in to Locked On Grizzlies each and every day with me and with my co-host, Joe Mullen. Today, you just joined with me on this episode of Locked On Grizzlies. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Remember that your favorite podcast now has a newsletter. Introducing the Locked On Grizzlies Daily Newsletter. It's your one stop for ultimate team and league coverage delivered right to your inbox. Sign up for free now at lockedondaily.com. That's lockedondaily.com and start your day with the all new free Locked On Grizzlies newsletter written by my co-host Joe Mullen. So make sure you guys go check that out as well. But it was an interesting game to check out for the Memphis Grizzlies on Tuesday. They ended up losing 121-116 against the Dallas Mavericks. If you want to go real big picture overall recap, this was a heavyweight battle. It's the way the game ended, and we'll talk about that here in a second. The way the game ended, no one's really going to think of it from the perspective of, wow, the Grizzlies kind of showed that, what they've done recently against bad teams, which is obliterate and destroy them, wasn't a fluke in any way. We talked about how hot the Grizzlies were, but the Mavericks were also hot. The Mavericks came in winners of 8 of their last 9 and 4 straight. The Grizzlies came in winners of 7 of their last 8 and 6 straight. Two of the hottest teams in the NBA, and that's how the game played out. The Mavs swung hard first. I think they had a 10-point lead early in this one, and the Grizzlies answered. He came back fighting in the second quarter. And then in the third quarter, the Grizzlies really took control of the game. 38-22 advantage in the third quarter, leading to the Grizzlies being up by 13 points by the start of the fourth quarter. And that's when everything went wrong. That's kind of the part of the game that we're going to be stuck pretty much talking about. The first 3 quarters were the first 3 quarters, but the fourth quarter of this game will get the majority of the attention in today's show. And first, we got to address the free throw discrepancy. It was obvious. It was clear. And it was a disadvantage against the Grizzlies from the standpoint of from competitively. When a team attempts 26 free throws in a quarter, it's hard for you to compete. 26-3, was the final fourth quarter tally in free throws between the two teams. According to ESPN stats and info, it's the largest discrepancy free throw differential in a fourth quarter of a game since 2015 in the NBA. So it's been pretty much 9 seasons since we've seen, a free throw gap to that magnitude. It was different, but I'm not here to blame the game just on the free throw discrepancy that we saw. Again, it was unusual. There were a few bad calls that I felt like were in there. If you listen to the broadcast with Pete and Brevin, they pointed out that a lot of the fouls were warranted. The Grizzlies, had some fouls that they just weren't being smart when they got in the bonus. They put the Mavs in the bonus early in the fourth quarter, and they continued to play really aggressive defense, and that led to some what we would call ticky-tack fouls being called, leading to Dallas Maverick free throws. But here's why I'm not blaming that as the result of the game. That was a big part of what happened. But when I say I'm not blaming the result of the game, the Grizzlies still could have won in spite of that if they would have played well in other areas. Again, if I felt like, man, look, they did everything they could. They played well in all these other areas, and the free throws just took them away, I'd be ranting for 10 minutes about free throws. But that's not what happened in this game. I think that's the easy cop-out answer. Jaren Jackson Jr. looked like he got fouled late at the basket, and I did feel like he should have went to the free throw line. There were a couple other opportunities there where the Grizzlies felt like they should have got to the line. And I get why it's frustrating. No team touches the paint more than the Grizzlies. They lead the NBA in paint scoring. So you think of, and they had more paint points in this game. So you think of a team that is so aggressive in getting to the paint, and they get outshot from the free throw line, by 30 free throws. It really doesn't sound right. But there were a couple other things that I wanted to pick out from this game in that fourth quarter that stood out to me as, despite of what happened with the free throws, this is how the Grizzlies still could have won the game. There was one stretch, and I'll get to the stretch, and then I'm gonna backpedal. There was one stretch in midway through the fourth quarter. I think there were about 7.5 minutes, 7:40 left in the fourth quarter. Excuse me. Ja Morant and Jaren Jackson Jr. both come out of the game. The Grizzlies at that point are up 11 points, 106-95. Ja Morant and Jaren Jackson Jr. both checked back into the game with about 5:23 left in the fourth quarter. So about a little bit more than 2 minutes of game action has passed. The Grizzlies did not score 1 point in that time frame, and that 11-point lead was cut to 6. It was 106-100 by the time that Ja Morant and Jaren Jackson Jr. checked back into the game, and the momentum clearly was shifted into the Mavs' direction. So here's my problem with that. You take one of them out, cool. I completely get it. I'm always one saying, guys got to get their rest, whatever the case may be. But to take your 2 star players out, even though Desmond Bane played really well in this game, but especially considering Desmond Bane hasn't, had the statistical performances, that we're used to seeing, in the past. But Ja Morant and Jaren Jackson Jr. have been the bona fide stars of this team. And both of them go out in the fourth quarter. And the Mavs never did this. Kyrie Irving had an off game, but when Luka wasn't on the floor, Kyrie was in the game. And we don't have to get into the minutes. Yeah, Luka played 40 minutes, and by the 7-minute mark of the fourth quarter that we're talking about, Luka had already played more minutes than Jaren and Ja would play for the entire game. So he played the rest of that game, and he already had played more minutes than those guys by the point that we're talking about. But those little rotation decisions matter, because if you have Ja or Jaren in the game during that 2-minute stretch, odds are one of them will get you at least one basket, and then you can bring the other in. But then, you bring both of those guys in. It's a 6-point game. Then Desmond Bane picks up his 5th foul, so he goes out of the game, and eventually he comes back into the game. And then you had your big 3. You had the big 3. The Grizzlies were up 6. In fact, they went up 8. I think the score was 111-103. The Grizzlies went up 111-103. Ja Morant was in the game. Desmond Bane was in the game. Jaren Jackson Jr. was in the game. Ja Morant had just made a big 3-pointer. And from that point on, they were outscored 18-5. From that point on, the Grizzlies shot 2 of 9 from the field in the last 3 minutes. So, the free throws were a huge factor. But there was a 2-minute stretch in there, midway through the fourth quarter. No Ja Morant, no Jaren Jackson Jr. on the floor. Midway through the fourth quarter of a very competitive game. And I want to point out, this isn't something that's new, so to speak. The Grizzlies have done this throughout the win streak. This was not new. But the problem is, I always felt, and this is what I said I wanted to get back to. If you listen to yesterday's show, shout out to the Everydayers. If you listen to Everyday's show, in yesterday's show, you heard me say that I'm not too fond of the idea of an 11-man rotation over the course of the season. At some point, they're going to have to get this thing down to 9 or 10. And I know some people disagree with that, and they said, no, the 11-man rotation is working. And if it's not broke, don't fix it. It's working because of the teams that you're playing. When you're playing teams like the Dallas Mavericks, Luka's going to be on the floor, as we just saw, for 40 minutes. Kyrie's going to be on the floor for 35. When those guys are playing that much, you don't have to match the minutes, I don't think. You don't say, okay, Ja, 38 minutes for you. But 31? Ja's playing 31 minutes. Luka's playing 40 minutes. You lose by 5. Do the math. Do the math. It's simple math here. So that 2-minute stretch from 7:40 in the fourth quarter to 5:23, that was a big one to me. No points scored by the Grizzlies in there, and the Mavs were able to cut into the lead by 5 points. And then again, going to the last point, the half-court offensive issues. Uh, Again, wasn't anything super drastic, but they failed to knock down some shots. Desmond Bain got a good mid-range look. Jaren Jackson Jr. got a good corner look on a three-pointer. But I wanted to see Jaren Jackson Jr. getting downhill. I wanted to see Ja Morant getting downhill. I wanted to see them force the issue. Again, there was a play where I felt like Jaren was fouled and nothing was called. But all in all, it was not great execution for the Grizzlies down the stretch in that game. So, yeah, the free throws stand out. I'm not going to ignore that. But at the same time, I feel like if we just say, hey, it was the free throws, you're ignoring some bigger picture points here. The free throws won't be like that every single game. You have different officiating crews and all that. But the rotations could be like that. If Taylor Jenkins doesn't say, hey, it worked the last 5-6 games during the win streak. No, you need to have Jaren or Ja on the floor. And the offensive, half-court issues down the stretch of the game, that's nothing new. We've talked about that over the past few years. But what we've talked about in recent days is if you go back to over the course of this 6-game win streak, the Grizzlies were obliterating opponents. The last 5 wins were all by double digits. Even the win before that against the Philadelphia 76ers, that was a double-digit game for most of the fourth quarter. And then Philly's backups cut the lead down, and the Grizzlies brought their starters in for like the last minute and closed the game out. So we haven't seen pretty much anything like this Mavericks game where it was, hey, it's 2 minutes left. Any little missed shot, any little minor mistake, something like Marcus Smart picking up a full court foul away from the basket, little things like that turn into real big things because they lead to 2 free throws going the other way. But overall, there was a lot of good learning material for this game for the Grizzlies. I also wrote about it at thecommercialappeal.com, so go check that out as well to see, just get my full breakdown on thoughts of the game. But yeah, I'm not really blaming this all on free throw shooting. I do agree that free throw shooting was, again, it's the biggest differential in the fourth quarter since 2015. You can't ignore that. But at the same time, I think the Grizzlies could have won in spite of that if they corrected some of those issues that we just touched on. Coming up here next on Locked On Grizzlies, we got to talk about Marcus Smart because the Grizzlies have been living and dying by Marcus Smart. And in this game, he probably was one of the main reasons that they lost. We're going to talk about that here next on Locked On Grizzlies. But before we get to that, remember that today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Look, if there's a live event that you want to go to out there, whether it's a concert, show, it doesn't have to be just sport. Gametime is the place that makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams play or go see your favorite artists or whatever the case may be live even easier. Gametime Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Look, here's the thing about Gametime. You have all these different features that will maximize your experience. You got Gametime Picks. Again, makes it easier to save more on sports, comedy, concerts, whatever you got all-in pricing. Toggling this feature shows the total up front with no surprise fees at checkout. You get the seat views that give you a good panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy. You get the lowest price guarantee. And if it's not the lowest price, Gametime will credit you 110% of the difference. Then you get Gametime ticket coverage. Your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime Picks. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNBA. That's LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Download the Gametime app today. What time is it? Gametime. This episode is also brought to you by PrizePicks. Listen up, everybody. PrizePicks is the place to go because now you can win up to 100 times. You possibly could win up to 100,000 if you choose correctly. But You can win up to 100 times your money on PrizePicks with as little as 4 correct picks. PrizePicks is the best way to get action on sports in over 30 states, including California, Florida, Georgia, and Texas. PrizePicks is the best way to get real money sports action. So join over 10 million users and sign up today because it's your money. Even if one of your picks doesn't hit, you can get right back on PrizePicks. So PrizePicks now offers Venmo for quick and easy deposits and withdrawals into your account this sports season. Look, PrizePicks, so many great opportunities, so many great features. PrizePicks is the best place to get real money sports action with over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings. PrizePicks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. All you got to do is pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 100 times your cash. Run your game all season long on PrizePicks. You want to know what one of my favorite features is on PrizePicks? It's simple. You can pretty much, check this out on PrizePicks. You can now, if one of your picks is incorrect, you can get it back. You can get your selection back. That means you can double your money, even if one of your picks doesn't hit. PrizePicks is the only place where you can take advantage of such great opportunities. So make sure you go download the app and use the code LOCKEDONNBA to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, run your game now over at PrizePicks. Well, this wasn't a great game for Marcus Smart. It was not a great game for Marcus Smart. And we've been tooting the horn of Marcus Smart lately. We have. It's been a great 3-4 games for Marcus Smart, and this wasn't that. Offensively, it was kind of a poor performance for him. Marcus Smart did not score a point, 25 minutes played. He did have 6 assists, and I'm going to get to that in a second. But 0 of 7 from the field, 0 of 4 on three-pointers, minus 13 plus minus. It was the worst plus minus on the Grizzlies in this game. And we got to talk about living and dying by Marcus Smart. Because the Grizzlies have been living lately, right? He's coming to the game. He's changing these games. And if you watch the first half of the Grizzlies-Dallas game, to me, Marcus Smart was good without scoring. He had a couple steals. He has really good hands defensively. He was active. He came in and he was bothering Luka a little bit more than, like Jalen Wells, I thought was playing solid defense. You want to talk about some bad foul calls. Jalen Wells really got some rough calls in that first half where he pretty much looked like he just had his hands up and Luka would lean into him and the refs would blow the whistle in favor of Luka. So Jalen Wells is someone who got some really tough whistles, not even just in the first half, but overall in this game. Jalen Wells was good. He was really good in this game. In fact, he had 10 points, knocked down a couple trays. He was plus 6 when he was on the floor in 22 minutes. But the problem was he was in foul trouble. And the Grizzlies leaned on Marcus Smart. And I've said in the past that Marcus Smart will be in the closing lineup. And this was the example of that. Even with Jalen Wells being available, in the last, couple minutes of the fourth quarter, the Grizzlies went to Marcus Smart. Marcus Smart is your more veteran defender. He's the guy that you probably trust more on Luka in the last couple minutes of the game. And he made what you probably would call a rookie mistake when he fouled Luka about 94 feet from the basket, reaching for the basketball, picks up a foul, 2 free throws for the Mavs, and little things like that you can't have from Marcus Smart. He's so good in so many areas. Again, I'm okay with him not scoring. And, he says himself, sometimes my shots fall, sometimes they don't. But it's about how can you impact the game in other ways. Defensively, he can still be impactful. The assists were still there in this game. So I say all that to say is I'm not going to overreact to Marcus Smart not having a good game in this game against the Mavs because I think for parts of the game he was good. He was very good in the first half. He was a very impactful defender, especially against Luka. He was physical. He came in the game. He got a couple steals. He ended this game with 3 steals. So there were some mistakes. The dumb foul. I mean, there were a couple 3-point shots he took, and I'm just like, what are you doing? But then again, if you go to the last 4 games, he's made some of those 3-point shots. So what do you want from him? All in all, I'm not going to, bury Marcus Smart because of this performance. I do think that you have to accept, as long as he's on this team, we'll talk one day down the road about how long that'll actually be. But as long as he's on the team, you got to accept the fact that he's going to have up and down scoring nights. And I think he accepts that fact. Like, even when he was making all the shots, a couple games ago, he was just saying, hey, my shots are just falling tonight. They're going to be nights when they don't fall. So I don't think he predicates his game on making or missing shots. He predicates his game on impact and winning basketball. How can I still be productive, whether I miss 5 threes or I make 5 threes? He had some steals. He had some assists. He just had a lot of missed shots in this game that really hurt the Grizzlies. And, down the stretch, you'd like to see Marcus Smart defer more to Ja, defer more to Jen. Use some of the playmaking that like I said, he had 6 assists. Maybe create for those guys a little bit, because defenses are going to load up against Ja and Jaren as you get down the stretch of games. But I think the Marcus Smart experience will be the Marcus Smart experience. You're going to have to live with some high highs, right? Fugazi makes 5 3-pointers. But then there's going to be days like this past game against the Mavs where it's minus 13, can't buy a shot. And it's just like, you probably feel like you could have won without him. But there are going to be a whole bunch more games where you feel like you can win because he's out there. So I'm cool with it. I don't think there needs to be some big change. I'm even fine with the closing lineup thing. Like, I know some people will say, oh, they're overthinking it because Jalen Wells has been really good. I do think eventually, like, you will need that extra shooter in the lineup. But I'm okay with, against Luka, having Marcus Smart out there to close out a game defensively, especially with the way Luka was cooking this game. Luka had 37 points. A lot of that work was done in the first half when he had 24 points in the first half. But all in all, the Marcus Smart experience, the Grizzlies are living and dying by it. And they're going to live and die by it, excuse me. And this was a game where it pretty much hurt him. Minus 13 in a 5-point loss. He played a lot of minutes. He played a lot down the stretch. And there you have it. So we'll see how things continue to progress in terms of, the Marcus Smart role, right? Him coming off the bench, him closing second quarter, him closing the fourth quarters. That's going to be something to monitor throughout the season as this season goes on for the Grizzlies. Coming up here next, the season goes on for the Grizzlies. They picked up a couple games. The Grizzlies, now we know they officially won't be in the NBA Cup knockout round. I know somewhere Joe Mullinax is smiling, but they added 2 games to their NBA schedule. We'll talk about that here coming up next on Locked On Grizzlies. But before we talk to that, this episode is brought to you by Chime. Remember, I like to say, when you think of Chime, you need to think of cha-ching, because Chime is all about helping put you in a better financial position. And look, we've all been there. Sometimes spending more than we should during the holiday season. Well, take control of your finances by using a Chime checking account with features like no monthly or maintenance fees, fee-free overdrafts for up to $200, or getting paid up to 2 days early with direct deposits. You can go learn more at chime.com/NBA right now. Look, millions of members are on Chime right now, taking advantage of these opportunities. Over 50,000 fee-free ATM, no monthly fees, and so much more. So you say, well, how do I set it up? Well, you can set up a direct deposit in your Chime account. After a qualifying direct deposit of $200+, Chime will notify you to enroll in Spot Me. And then with an activated debit card, Chime will spot you up to $200 on debit card purchases and cash withdrawals. Your next direct deposit is applied to your negative deposit. So Chime never charges overdraft fees for using Spot Me. Enjoy the holidays while keeping your financial goals on track with Chime. Open your account in 2 minutes at chime.com/NBA. That's chime.com/NBA. Chime feels like process. Banking services and debit cards provided by Bancorp, NA, or Stride Bank in a members FDIC. Spot Me eligibility requirements and overdraft limits apply. Direct deposit timing depends on submission of payment file. Boosts are available to eligible Chime members enrolled in Spot Me and are subject to monthly limits. Fees apply at out of work ATMs and for OTC withdrawals. So go take advantage of the opportunities that Chime is giving you throughout this holiday season. So the Grizzlies will have to flush this loss, right? It was a loss to the Mavs, and nobody likes losing to the Mavs around here, especially when you got them beat, especially with the way that the Grizzlies kind of wanted to send a statement. But it is what it is. It's one game. I think it's a game that the Grizzlies can learn a lot from, and it's a game where, quite frankly, the Grizzlies will grow from. I believe the Grizzlies have not been in a lot of these situations where they've been, in clutch time moments. Have not had a lot of those situations this season. So at the end of the day, good learning point for the Grizzlies, especially with the interesting schedule coming up here. We know they'll have Sacramento Kings, and then they'll go to Boston to take on the Celtics. Then they get the Washington Wizards, and then there's this big gap in the schedule for a week. Now that gap is being filled. 2 games have been added or filled into the Grizzlies schedule because we've always known that 2 games would get placed in between these dates. But 2 dates have been filled in for the Memphis Grizzlies because they did not advance to the knockout stage. As we said earlier, the loss to the Mavs actually advanced. So the Mavs advanced to the knockout stage. I think the Warriors advanced too. So 2 teams out of the Grizzlies division ends up going to the knockout stage. But with all that being said, the Grizzlies picked up 2 games to their schedule, and the 2 games were going to be from teams that did not qualify for the knockout stage. So typically it's 2 teams that probably aren't among the best in the NBA. And here's who the Grizzlies will draw in that setting. First, on December 13th, Friday, December 13th, they'll play the Brooklyn Nets at home. And then on December 15th, again, they'll get the Los Angeles Lakers in Los Angeles on the road. So my first reaction to this is, as Joe Monlax like to say, we like narratives on Locked On Grizzlies. I think the NBA likes narratives even more than us. I've always thought that because of, the matchups they choose to start the season off, the matchups they choose for Christmas Day, even the matchups they choose for the Grizzlies and MLK Day. Like this year, it's Anthony Edwards and the Minnesota Timberwolves. I don't think that's an accident that Anthony Edwards is getting all this face of the league talk, and the league goes, that'll be a good matchup to put against Ja Morant and the Grizzlies on MLK Day. But I digress. There's the one I digress for the episode. That's neither here nor there. Let's talk about these 2 matchups that we'll eventually talk about a little bit more from a narrative standpoint right now. We'll break them down a little bit more. But I like the addition of the Nets simply because the Nets have beaten the Grizzlies twice this season. I think one of those games you had Ja Morant, but you did not have Ja Morant, Desmond Bane, and Jaren Jackson Jr. in any of those games. So it will be good to see those 3 guys take the floor against the Brooklyn Nets potentially as well. And then the big man could be back for this. Zach Edey. All things are progressing well with him up to this point. He's starting to ramp up. So there's a chance you could even see him this weekend against the Boston Celtics or against the Washington Wizards. Things are trending up for Zach Edey. But that's the first matchup, December 13th. Then December 15th, the Grizzlies will take on the Los Angeles Lakers on the road. So the Lakers have been a much better team at home than they've been on the road. But still, I think this Lakers team, after a decent start, they got some weaknesses. And we're starting to see it a little bit. I think the main thing is with LeBron James kind of not playing his best basketball of late. Some people are saying Father Time is is creeping in on him, and others are saying, well, he's just in a bad stretch. But we'll find out here really soon. I'm excited about them adding that game to the schedule because the Grizzlies weren't supposed to see the Lakers again until late March, especially with everything that's going on. Remember, Ja Morant said he didn't like the Lakers. They won that game, and he got hurt in that game. We didn't see Ja Morant for the second matchup against the Lakers. The Lakers won that game. Dalton Connect comes out and says, the Lakers, felt disrespected by the way that, Ja Morant and then players were talking about LeBron James. So glad they added that one as well. So 2 games added to the Grizzlies schedule against the Nets at home, on the road against the Los Angeles Lakers. And that'll be that in terms of new schedule additions. So no knockout stage for the Memphis Grizzlies. Your favorite podcast now has a newsletter introducing the Locked On Grizzlies daily newsletter. It's the one stop for ultimate team and league coverage delivered right to your inbox. Sign up for free now at lockedondaily.com. That's lockedondaily.com, and start your day with the all new free Locked On Grizzlies newsletter. Appreciate you guys for tuning in to Locked On Grizzlies with me today. Tomorrow, I'll be back with Joe Monax, and we'll break down a lot of things, including this upcoming matchup against the Sacramento Kings. And then there's a couple rotation things that I want to talk about. There's a couple guys. I feel like the rotation, as time goes on, will become clearer and clearer. And as of right now, I'm kind of over the 11-man thing. Like I was already leaning that way. I'm kind of over it because of the schedule's about to get tougher, and you got to bottle down a little bit more. So we'll talk about that more on tomorrow's episode of Locked On Grizzlies. But until then, thank you for tuning in on today. And remember, Locked On Grizzlies is free and available wherever you get your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, wherever you get it. I'm Damichael Cole, and we'll see you on Locked On Grizzlies.